The lonely wind swept across the wide Montana plains, whispering through dry grass and rattling the old barn shutters of Hollow Creek Ranch, a stretch of land so vast and silent it seemed the world had forgotten it. The man who owned it, a rugged rancher with calloused hands and eyes hardened by solitude, stood on the porch staring toward the horizon. For years, he had lived with nothing but the echo of his own footsteps and the sound of cattle in the distance, a ghost among fences and fields. He had long since given up on the idea of companionship, choosing instead the predictability of labor over the risk of heartbreak. Yet, there he stood now, freshly shaved, shirt pressed, boots polished, waiting. It had taken months of letters, awkward words scratched by lantern light, and a good measure of courage for him to send for a mail-order bride. Loneliness had gnawed at him too long, and though pride once kept him silent, the emptiness finally won. He had imagined her every night since her last letter, a gentle lady with soft hands, delicate features, and laughter that would finally fill the hollow halls of his home. The stagecoach was late, but his heart was already racing. He watched the dirt road shimmer in the heat, every dust cloud making him straighten and squint, only to exhale in disappointment. Then at last, in the golden haze of late afternoon, a dark shape appeared, the stagecoach rumbling over the hill, horses straining as the driver cracked his whip. The sight made his pulse quicken. This was it, the day everything would change. The wheels ground to a halt in front of the porch, sending a wave of dust into the air. The driver jumped down, tipped his hat, and said, "Got your lady here, sir." The rancher swallowed hard, heart pounding like a drum as the coach door creaked open. A boot appeared first, sturdy, scuffed, nothing delicate about it. Then a hand gripped the doorframe, large and sure. When the woman stepped out, his breath caught in his chest. She wasn't what he'd pictured at all. She was tall, taller than him by an inch or two, broad in the shoulders, strong in the arms, and dressed in a plain travel gown that had clearly seen dust and distance. Her shadow fell over him like the silhouette of a mountain. She looked around with calm confidence, her eyes sharp and bright, and when she smiled, it wasn't shy or nervous, it was steady, warm, and sure of itself. The rancher felt his throat tighten. This wasn't the fragile flower he'd imagined. There was something fierce in the way she carried herself, something grounded, unshaken by the long journey or the look of surprise on his face. Without waiting for an introduction, she stepped forward, grabbed her heavy trunk as if it weighed nothing, and set it down on the porch with a thud that made the wood creak. The driver chuckled under his breath. "Strong one, ain't she?" The rancher said nothing, still caught between disbelief and admiration. The woman turned to him and spoke in a deep, rich voice that rolled like thunder on a summer night, asking if this was indeed Hollow Creek Ranch. He nodded, trying to find his words. She gave a satisfied nod, glanced around, and said she'd better see to the kitchen before sundown, that a long journey worked up an appetite. He blinked as she brushed past him, her boots echoing on the wooden steps, the scent of dust and lavender lingering in her wake. The rancher stood there for several seconds, staring after her, unsure whether to laugh, run, or thank heaven. This wasn't the lady from the letters. This was someone else entirely, someone unbothered by distance, unimpressed by fear. He slowly turned toward the doorway where her trunk rested, the initials carved on it almost worn away, as if she'd lived more lives than one person ought to. The evening sun dipped behind the hills, bathing the ranch in orange light, and the wind shifted, softer now, almost approving. Inside, he could hear her moving about, pots clinking, fire crackling, footsteps steady as the rhythm of her voice humming some low tune. For the first time in years, his house wasn't silent. The smell of cooking drifted out the open window, mixing with the scent of pine and earth. The rancher sat on the porch step, elbows on his knees, still trying to understand what fate had just delivered. He'd asked for a wife, but this woman, whoever she was, felt like something else entirely. There was no trace of fragility, no hint of hesitation. Instead, there was a strength that unnerved and intrigued him at once. He looked at the sunset, at the smoke rising from his own chimney, and wondered if the good Lord had sent him what he needed rather than what he wanted. He'd spent his whole life taming land and livestock, but something told him this was the one thing he wouldn't be able to control. The ranch had seen storms, droughts, and loss, but nothing like the force that had just stepped off that wagon. That night, when he walked into the house, the table was already set, the stew simmering, and the fire roaring. She looked up, said supper was ready, and gestured for him to sit. He obeyed without a word, his heart still drumming as he took his place at the table. The stew was perfect, hearty, smoky, and somehow familiar. They ate mostly in silence, though she filled the quiet with the sound of her spoon clinking and a soft hum beneath her breath. The rancher caught himself staring more than once, unable to make sense of the feeling stirring in him. After the meal, she rose, washed the dishes without being asked, and then stood at the doorway, looking out toward the night. "You've got a fine stretch of land here," she said finally, her voice thoughtful. "A man could build a good life on it, if he isn't afraid of the work." He didn't answer. He couldn't. She turned, gave him a look that seemed to see straight through the walls he'd built around himself, and added, "Well, I don't scare easy." Then she disappeared down the hall, her boots echoing on the floorboards until the sound faded. The rancher remained by the fire long after she was gone, staring at the flames. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about loneliness, he was thinking about the woman who'd walked into his life like a storm and sat down at his table as if she'd always belonged there. Something inside him shifted that night, not a thunderclap, but the slow, certain movement of ice beginning to melt. And though he didn't yet know her name, one truth had already rooted deep inside him: life at Hollow Creek would never be the same again. Days turned to weeks, and the rancher found himself drawn to her quiet strength. She worked beside him, fearless and tireless, turning the lonely ranch into a home. One night, thunder shook the sky, and fear gripped him as lightning struck near the barn. She rushed out first, saving the horses without hesitation. As rain poured, he realized she wasn't what he expected, but everything his heart had been waiting for.